Hey there, I want to do another semi-off-the-cuff video just kind of covering how the theory crafting is going for Solution 9 and looking into just kind of my own thoughts of where that zone is going, how it fits into Arcadion, and maybe the overall narrative, theory crafting kind of where the direction of this zone could be. Who built it, who lives there, is it still alive? Bear in mind, all of this is pretty much just completely off the cuff. It is from looking at the community's general thoughts, my own thoughts, and really anything could happen. We don't know much at all, if anything really, about the direction that we're going in this expansion, so take all of this with a grain of salt. But first off, I'm going to play the trailer we've got with no audio from me, and we'll just take another look at it again. So, with the trailer now out of the way, I am going to cover first one theory which started off as fairly popular and I think is now kind of dying in terms of general interest, which is that Solution 9 is another Alag base, another installation, maybe something lost from the Empire, that kind of thing. Generally, this has kind of fallen by the wayside compared to the other ideas that are around there, and I think that's mostly just because it doesn't look anything like what we have seen in the general kind of Alag cities, Alag places like Dalamud and that kind of such. I have to agree and say I really don't think it's Alag. The general information we have so far points more towards either the ancients or some kind of civilization that was born around the Second Calamity era, or at least arrived around the Second Calamity era. But we'll get into that next up. So, what do we know about Solution 9 and Arcadion? Well, first off, from the panels that we've been shown, we know that this kind of area runs off of Levenstrike, this idea of powered by lightning, which some people have drawn an immediate conclusion to the 12th reflection, which had the lightning calamity. The idea being that surely living through the end of a lightning calamity, they may have found a way to power themselves or power some kind of structure around lightning energy and kind of making use of it. It could be that the solution in Solution 9 is it was the ninth solution to the reflections, to the sundering and to returning to the source. And so this city is a fragment of the 12th shard, survivors of that. Now, I think it would be cool, and it leads into the idea of what is the sixth zone, because we still don't know anything about that. What is this sixth zone? There's always a mystery zone, and maybe it could be some kind of shadow of the 12th shard, or some kind of past or future representation of that. I'm not I'm not leaning heavily towards this, even though I think it's cool, just because there's so many variables. We've done time stuff a couple of times now, going back to Elpis, going through the Alexander stuff. There was some sort of it playing around with the first, so I don't know if we want to do that again with the 12th, and maybe not doing yet another shard so soon after the first and after the 13th. It's a lot of characters, it's a lot of worlds to bring in so quickly when it really feels like those areas haven't quite finished. They still need a little bit more in the oven, let them cook a bit longer. So I'm not entirely sold. Now the other thing to do with Lightning Aether is what about here on the source? What if all of those thousands of years ago there was a civilization which survived the 12th kind of bring arrival, the 12th calamity, or 12th reflections calamity that was brought into the source, and they found a way to survive Lightning Aether, maybe keep themselves away from everything that was going on, maybe with the help of a Zem, or the kind of sundered version of a Zem. Other people have gone further and said that it could be a group of ancients that worked with Azem. It's been noted that seemingly Azem wanted to, in some of the stories, help deal with the issue of the planets, the end of days, and Zodiac and that, without resorting to just killing everyone, essentially, to sacrificing their souls to appease Zodiac and to bring people back, to start this chain of death and reborn, death reborn, again and again. So there is some I want to say concrete, but it's not concrete. There is some more evidence to there being something more ancient-like in the proto-language translations we've seen. The proto-language was referenced in the most recent Eorzea collection. The Eorzea Sacreda 3, I believe, has a list of the Nordvarant language, the Eorzean language, and the proto-language. The reason people are going to the proto-language is essentially there is a sign, which I'll try and find to put up here, which reads employment to this way, soul supply to the other direction. Now, soul supply isn't just an ancient thing. Let's get this out of the way. Definitely could Alag or something like that use that. I mean, even in Stormblood, we saw soul extraction appear with the Guardians. So it's not like it has to be the ancients for soul supply. It could be some kind of weird Omnicron thing, another like base for them. It could be the ancients, could be the Allegans, could be just another high-tech civilization that we haven't met and that managed to survive all this time. Some kind of non-Amaratine group. But whoever they are, it's clear that they probably will not look like the ancients, because they have advertisements which look just like here. They look like sundered races. So whoever these people are, whilst they may have started earlier, they currently definitely have some kind of look similar to us, or at least they know of us and are advertising with our faces. So we'll see what that is. Something's clearly going on there. So this is the point in the video where I have to go back and look at other people's kind of thoughts on this. If you're not familiar with the Final Fantasy fanbase and how prep for expansions kind of goes, the Theorycrafting, then I'll explain that usually what ends up happening is everybody knows it's an open secret that FF14 takes elements of the stories from all of the other Final Fantasy games, kind of takes bits here, takes bits there, puts them together and creates a kind of 14 original story, but using the pieces of the other games, meshing into our world and creating this kind of timeline of Final Fantasy. So, where does that lead on to? People have been kind of theorycrafting what is this civilization? Who are the people? Some people have talked a lot about FF12 and where that could be, just because of this kind of super high-tech civilization. There is the Arcadians in 12, I believe, that's spelled very differently, which is a direct reference to possibly Arcadion or Arcadia, which Arcadia meaning in a kind of Greek or like early mythological sense, utopia, a kind of grand supernatural beings, location, a place of general just amazement and happiness, this perfect land. I definitely think there's something there to the word Arcadia. There's a lot of precedent for Square Enix taking words like that, particularly Greek in the ancients and how they've done the Asians, and using that just as a reference point. Now, it doesn't mean anything at all, but the interesting point for me is specifically on Arcadian itself, and the artwork that they've shown us. There is this kind of red symbol on one of the signs, which everyone has gone, oh, Asians. It could be Ultima, it could be La Habrea, it could be some of the other people we haven't seen. I would like to see an Asian we haven't seen, learn more about them possibly. My only interest for this, or my only kind of different point for that, is something that a Free Company member in my FC brought up, which was that it looks like the symbol for Atlas, which is a primal in FF13-2 and in FF16, possibly elsewhere, I'm not sure. Those are the ones that I found. And I was initially kind of like, yeah, okay, sure, Atlas, whatever. That doesn't mean much to me. I don't know that primal very well. However, if we consider that Atlas is the penultimate primal, the end boss for the 8-man raid, And it starts to make sense more with the reference to Arcadia being the Utopia city, Arcadion taking from Arcadia being the raid, because Atlas is supposedly in mythology the 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 king of this actual place, of this utopia, of Arcadia, the king of Arcadia. So maybe it's possible that if the idea of like the Titan comes down and gives humanity fire, what if Atlas helped teach these people how to use Levin Strike, how to use Lightning Aether, and they've kind of been hiding out with this primal, possibly working with him or working with creatures associated with them, and that's why they've been hidden. It's entirely possible also that it's not a primal and it's some kind of other supernatural being, which again fits into Arcadia, fits into the overall idea of this super race of people, this advanced civilization, hiding out when no one could find them. Now, it seems very likely that South Tyrrell probably knows something about this. There's heritage found, which is supposedly linked to Solution 9, knows it's there, seems to do something with them, we assume. So they're not entirely hidden, but maybe this is a more stable area of the world than Eorzea. The Ascians didn't seem as interested in it, at least from what little we've heard. We heard basically nothing about the new world, and at least in the trailer that we've seen, in the screenshots we've seen, haven't seen a lot of Alag influence either. So I guess Emmet wasn't involved. Emmet obviously did a lot alongside Hermes in the Allagan Empire. So is it possible that this area has just received less calamity damage than the rest of the world, and a civilization may have survived throughout all of that, keeping its head down, keeping focused, keeping alive? This also comes back to the idea of solution. What is the solution to? There are a couple of questions. Now, a popular theory going around is that it's simply a solution to either Dynamis or the Calamity. I lean on Dynamis. I like the idea that these people have maybe advanced to the point that they understand what Dynamis is, or maybe that they've managed to communicate with Hydaelyn, and they've kind of come to this point of figuring out what do we want to do. And Soul Supply leads into that. Maybe they're trying to build up their Aether again, get back to the level of the Ancients, or it's merely a kind of digitized stockpile of people for counteracting the issue of the calamity, the rejoinings. When the rejoinings happen and more Aether surges in and the worst happens, they've digitized themselves like the Omnicrons, and Soul Supply is essentially go here, recover yourself, recover your loved one, recover your memories, and then employment is this way. What if the sign isn't to people coming into the city, but to the city's residents themselves once they awaken from whatever solution they've made to deal with the rejoinings? So they wake up, they come back from the rejoining, first thing they see is something like this sign, and it goes, Soul Supply. Who was I? I don't know. I go to the Soul Supply, I regain myself, then I go to employment that way. I remember who I was, what my job in society was. So to that end, they have to be some kind of big race in Final Fantasy, or at least there are several references to kind of bigger mortal races in Final Fantasy. One of the things people jumped to, as I mentioned earlier, was the Arcadions. The Arcadions in FF12, I really don't think they're going to be them. They might just take the name just because of the Arcadion 8-man. But the Arcadians are basically Garlemald guys. They use judges, they use a lot of the tech that Garlemald does, the airships. The FF12 Empire very much is just Garlemald in a lot of how it handles things, simply because I think that the writers for 14 and obviously Yoshi himself really just like Evil East. They like the writer, they like tactics, so they just use that theme. If something is in those games, it's a good chance we're going to see it in 14. They just simply they like that world, they like that lower fantasy feel, that tech meets medieval in a kind of like nice manner. So I don't think it's them. I think it's too high tech, and we don't know enough about the civilization to really think that. Now, another thing which we could take is there are these people called the Ikoria, which used to live in Ivorice among the other races before withdrawing into their own realm. These are also FF12, and they don't really play like a massive role. I would say they're kind of like more background figures, but there's references to Vanat and other kind of ancient things. So it leads back into an older race, an older people. What if these Ikoria in 14 are some of the people who disagreed with the Ascians? And so they were ancients, they were sundered, they evolved down the line, and much like how the Ascians themselves reawoke people, reawoke Ascians, kind of pulled their souls into Ascian bodies and said, "You are Ultima, you are this Ascian, that Ascian," the various different names of the Ascians. What if we have the followers of Vanat, the followers of Hydaelyn, or those who disagreed, like Azem, and we have their group possibly taking their souls and making the Ikoria, making a group of people who wanted to find a solution, a way to survive, a way for people on this world, for life on this world, to continue without destroying everything, without killing themselves, without sacrificing to some horrible god, going through this process of doing stuff to their souls. So, obviously, you're going to go, okay, sure, Kate, but why are you so interested in the Ikoria? You haven't really said anything about them. What makes them more interesting than the Arcadians as a potential thing? Other people have mentioned like the Albed and stuff, but I really think that the Ikoria seem like an interesting route for this. And that's because the Ikoria directly in the game are referenced as this kind of genderless, like ghost people, these people who are immortal, but have kind of given up their corporeal being and have moved on to become gods in a way. They're directly referenced in an Aeltap rumor, which essentially says souls and entities, though vague and lacking in substance, are nonetheless possessed of great power. No great surprise, for are they not the source's life energy? Were these two essences to become one, you can imagine the result, I am sure. It is said that the High Arcana is nothing less than the product of this union, and it is my belief that in these beings we may perceive the true form of the gods. So the Ikoria are essentially kind of lifeless soul beings which possess armor and are probably the closest thing that we would see to something like a living machina, a living robot, a bit, again, like the Omicrons, who essentially didn't really lose so much as just give up. They just kind of gave up to depression and to the Endsinger. What if this is another way in which a race has decided to survive with the Dynamis issue, with the issue of the reflections and the calamities and what was happening? So it's also possible that that these people could be linked to the 12 that we've seen in the recent raid, the FF 24-man raid, because the Ikoria are linked to helping mortality, but they do it through like the possession of people, through taking certain forms, taking possibly familiar forms, and using them to kind of direct the course of things, direct where they want things to go. It would make sense, again, if they are a faction to do with a Zem or a faction to do with an art, and they've sat back and kind of gently directed things. And now that Hydaelyn is gone, now that RSM seems to be taking control a bit more, that Etheris is Etheris again, and no longer just the world of Hydaelyn, the world of Eorzea, that it's time for them to maybe reveal themselves. There are some other things as to why anything to do with FF12 just interests me and why it could be a 14 thing, and it's mostly because we take so much from this game for 14. We take the Ascians, we take a lot of stuff to do with the kind of Nebesite and the I'm forgetting the name of this, the stone we used to trap the Ascians in. Anyway, White Aurosite, there we go. All of this kind of stuff comes from these earlier Final Fantasies. This idea of like saints and gods. I mean, we've played entire raids of Ivalice, so would it not make sense to again have Ivalice drawn into the game some more? I don't know. I really feel like the Ikoria could be the way we're going. There's just so many references to this, which makes me think this is the route. Yeah, there's lots of quotes of this. The walls of a great city they've withdrawn behind, and and references to Zodiac and stuff in their story, that it makes me kind of think this is the route, that this is the way things have gone. Now, there is references to Ultima in the Ikoria, which, again, some people have really thought that this is going to be the Ultima kind of raid, the Ultima city, that we're going to hear more about the Ascian Ultima. Now, again, you might say, okay, but the Ascians are dead. We've been told that like all of the unsundered Ascians are dead, and we've seen 2 Ascians which Gaius has supposedly killed all that way ago. He had the red mask for 2 killed Ascians. Now, we've been told who those 2 were, and one of them was Ultima. Now, hey, Gaius is a badass, love Gaius, but how did he kill these 2 Ascians? Did he use White Auracite? Did he know to use White Auracite? Or did he just hunt them down and repeatedly kill them? If they were a sundered Ascian and were reborn, they could actually come back. Ultima could exist, especially if she's from this place and she has her soul locked into this soul supply. If she was that old, there is a chance that Solution 9 and the Arcadion is the city of Ultima. It is that old, and that its people, whilst they exist, are fragments of a much, much earlier Aferis, and we're going to see the Ascians again, I guess, but a very different direction. A immortal Ascian, no longer an Ascian that thinks it's above us so much, but more of their route for life moving on. What people who essentially weren't the Convocation of 14, what the average citizens did, because we know very little about the ancient world beyond then, and pretty much everything that we do know is from the imagination of Emmett Sulk and some of the kind of past history of the other Ascians that were willing to talk to us. Anyway, guys, that's really where I want to end it today. I think I've rambled on enough, but there's so much that could be here. I didn't even get into Terra and FF9 and all that kind of theory crafting, but I really leaned onto the FF12 stuff and the FF13-2 stuff of Atlas is going to be the primal boss in some form, Arcadia, the Utopia, could be the Icorian city, and just kind of seeing that kind of path. Again, we know nothing, so there isn't much to go on yet. Really hoping maybe we hear a bit more in the patches, but I don't think the North Toral story is going to be touched at all before Dawntrail. I really think this is only going to touch on the Southern Toral story big session, and then later on we'll get to reveal this big underlying plot of what is going on, similar to Shadowbringers, in how we had nothing to do with the final zone until we were actually there, until the big defining moment. But thanks for watching, guys. I know it's mostly just been me talking and not too much in terms of video other than me playing about the trailer and showing a couple of images. If you got this far, like the video, let me know what you think down in the comments. What direction do you think we're going? I'd love to kind of have a chat about it, to get some other thoughts in the community. Maybe I've missed something. I probably have. There was a lot of theory crafting out there, and yeah, just thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. I'm probably going to do a few more things about this subject or about Final Fantasy in general, but for now, catch you later.